Chapter 81, Hannah Abbott. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Time flies, and it's already September 1st. Swann's house was buzzing with activity early this morning. Harry. Do you have everything? Mia really didn't want Harry to leave. She kept checking his luggage, worried he'd forgotten something, unable to express how much she'd miss him. I've got everything, Aunt Mia. We packed it together last night. Why so few snacks? Grab some more candy, cookies, and Coke. No, Sebastian said too much sugar is bad for your teeth. Don't listen to his nonsense. Mia glared at Sebastian, who was standing nearby looking cheerful, then turned back to Harry, saying gently, Don't worry, a bottle of tooth health potion will take care of it. What about clothes? School uniform. Everyday stuff. I packed plenty, Aunt Mia. Any more and the suitcase will explode. I have way too many clothes to wear anyway. Harry was starting to feel overwhelmed. Aunt Mia was going a little overboard. Good thing this is the wizarding world, and a box with an undetectable extension charm could handle anything. If this were the Muggle world, they'd need a moving company. He looked at Sebastian standing by the door, silently pleading for help. Sebastian just shrugged innocently, palms up, as if to say, I'm out of this one, Harry. It was one of those moments where Mia just wanted to make sure his suitcase was full. Might as well enjoy it. Once everything was, supposedly, packed, Sebastian drove Mia and Harry to King's Cross Station. On the way, Harry asked excitedly, Aunt Mia, you said Hogwarts has 4 houses. Which one should I be in? Ahem, Sebastian coughed, then added mysteriously, Harry, you'll take a boat across a black lake. And the monster in the black lake will attack you. Harry's eyes widened. Sebastian grinned. Relax, it's just a test. It won't really hurt you. How you do will decide which house you're put in. Oh. That's it. Sebastian was so cool. He was giving him the inside scoop so he could be ready, otherwise, when the attack came, he'd probably mess it up. Harry gripped his wand, determined to ace the test. Sebastian glanced in the rearview mirror and saw Mia giving him a look of disapproval. A silent understanding passed between them. They arrived at King's Cross Station right around 10:30, on platform 9 3/4. A classic red steam train sat waiting. The engine rumbled, and white smoke puffed from the chimney, filling the air. A gleaming golden sign hung on the side of the train, Hogwarts Express. Parents helped their kids adjust their robes, faces showing a mix of pride and sadness. Most of the new students were bouncing around, clutching wands, holding their parents' hands, practically bursting to get on the train to the magical world. Older students were greeting each other, excitedly catching up on their summer adventures. Some were already heading into the train, eager to find their friends. Harry stared in amazement. This was platform 9 3/4. Just on the other side of a wall, everything was completely different. He felt a rush of excitement and anticipation. He wondered how fast this train was. As fast as the night bus? Would he make new friends? He followed Mia, walking toward the end of the train. After spotting an empty compartment, he hopped on and opened the window to talk to Mia. Sebastian stood back, watching them and smiling at the kids walking by. Finally, the train whistle blew, and he stepped forward, put his arm around Mia, and waved goodbye to Harry. Harry, don't sleep the whole time. The scenery's great. See you later. To welcome the new year, the Hogwarts Great Hall was once again looking magnificent. Sebastian sat in a professor's chair, looking at Lockhart next to him with thinly veiled disdain. After Lockhart and Swan Media stomped the Daily Prophet into the ground, Sebastian kept his promise. He suggested to Dumbledore that a short writing course be added, recommending Lockhart as the professor. Now Lockhart, having gotten what he wanted, was loving the attention. He wore the flashiest clothes, flashed the most perfect smile, and signed autographs. Oh my God, Lockhart is even better looking in person than on TV. And he's an amazing actor. I'm obsessed with him. Totally. I watched his show like 3 times this summer. He's incredible. He's the writer, director, and star. He works so hard. How much do you think his autograph's worth? Should I get him to sign a few more? I could make a killing. Sebastian's brain was starting to throb from the chatter. He was starting to understand how Snape felt about him last year. Seeing Professor McGonagall about to bring the first years into the hall, Sebastian quickly nudged Lockhart. Hey! Don't get carried away. If McGonagall sees you holding an autograph session, she's not going to be thrilled. Lockhart got the message. He stood up and addressed the kids. Thanks for your love. Autograph session's over for today. Stop by my office if you need anything. The students slowly dispersed, returning to their seats. The doors of the great hall slowly opened, and Professor McGonagall walked in solemnly, followed by a line of nervous-looking kids. She stopped in front of the professor's table, signaled for the kids to line up, then took out the sorting hat and placed it on the stool. The sorting ceremony will now begin. Students whose names are called, please come forward and put on the sorting hat to be sorted. Sebastian watched the sorting ceremony with interest, looking forward to the scene. Hannah Abbott. Hearing that familiar name, he leaned back in his chair, sighing with satisfaction. This was going to be good. Chapter 82 Harry, the sorting hat is not right at all. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Harry stood in line, face burning, watching the younger wizards get sorted one by one. He was mortified, remembering the chaos he'd caused on the Black Lake, and wished the ground would swallow him whole. He shot a resentful glare at the grinning Sebastian and muttered to himself, Sebastian's such a liar. Saying he wanted to duel with the water monster. I was just telling everyone not to freak out. He shook his head, so dumb. Luckily for Harry, the sorting ceremony had started, and his classmates seemed to have completely forgotten about him, their attention fixed on the front. Suddenly, he overheard someone complaining nearby. No way. Crabbe and Goyle got into Hufflepuff. The sorting hat's got to be off its rocker. Something's definitely fishy here. Humph, good riddance to them in Hufflepuff. Those two knuckleheads would have just embarrassed Slytherin. Harry looked up and saw Malfoy, the kid he'd met in Diagon Alley, making the snide remarks. He ignored him, lowering his head to wait for Professor McGonagall to call his name. Harry Potter. Harry took a deep breath and walked forward, the murmur of the crowd washing over him. He placed the sorting hat on his head. Difficult, very difficult. Where to put you? Hearing the voice in his head, Harry thought firmly, I want to go to Slytherin. He'd already decided on Slytherin long before coming to Hogwarts. After all, he'd been living with the Slytherin professors for the past 2 months and felt a real connection with them. Professor Snape's patience and knowledge had sparked his interest in potions, and Sebastian's elegance and strength made him admire him even more. Both professors had made a lasting impression. Now that he was at Hogwarts and still finding his feet, Harry naturally wanted to be in the same house as his mentors, benefiting from their guidance and support. As if reading his mind, the sorting hat whispered, Want Slytherin, eh? That house could certainly help you achieve greatness. In that case. Gryffindor. The sorting hat's shout wiped the smile off Harry's face. He almost thought he'd misheard, but the cheers from the Gryffindor table were deafening. A definite confirmation. Isn't Slytherin supposed to lead to glory? Why the sudden change of heart? Was Malfoy right? Is this old hat completely busted? Harry slammed the sorting hat back on the stool, fuming. As he turned away, he couldn't help but glance at the professor's table. Professor Snape's face was unreadable as he clapped slowly, while Sebastian smiled at him, his eyes filled with encouragement. Harry gave both professors a slightly apologetic smile, then took a deep breath and headed towards the boisterous Gryffindor table. The boys' worries soon faded, and he quickly made friends with his new housemates, chatting and laughing. Once everyone had eaten their fill, Dumbledore stood up to address the students. This year, we welcome 2 new professors to Hogwarts. First, Professor Gilderoy Lockhart, who will be teaching a new subject, writing. First-year students will learn how to write papers from Professor Lockhart every Saturday morning for 2 months. Lockhart rose and waved enthusiastically, causing an uproar in the Great Hall. Why is it just for first years? That's not fair. Can we audit the class, Professor Lockhart? Professor, could you sign some autographs? Dumbledore struggled to regain control of the hall. And Professor Quirinus Quirrell. Many of our older students will remember him. Before he could finish, the hall erupted in noise again. Professor Quirrell's back. What happened to Professor Swann? Seriously? I was going to sign up for Muggle studies this year. What am I supposed to do? Headmaster, you must be mistaken. Harry recognized the man he'd met at the Leaky Cauldron. His face was still pale, but he was now wearing a thick purple turban. Don't worry, Dumbledore said, using a sonorous charm to amplify his voice. Professor Swann will continue to teach Muggle studies. Professor Quirrell will be teaching defense against the dark arts. I'm sure you'll all get along famously. Once the students quieted down, Dumbledore continued, next, a few important announcements. This year, the school is launching a work-study program. All students will have the opportunity to earn a substantial number of galleons. Details and requirements will be posted on the notice boards. First-year students are strictly forbidden from entering the Forbidden Forest. And a word of warning, if you wish to avoid any accidents, please stay away from the corridor on the right-hand side of the 4th floor. Finally, Professor Swann has an important announcement to make. Harry was confused. Isn't Hogwarts supposed to be the safest place in the wizarding world? Why is the 4th floor corridor dangerous? He wanted to ask Percy, the prefect next to him, but everyone, including Percy, was staring intently at Sebastian at the professor's table. Sebastian stood up, smiling at the crowd. First, the Quidditch team tryouts are set. They will be held Saturday morning of the first week of school at 8 a.m. sharp. Any students interested in trying out should be sure to attend. Secondly, according to tradition, all new students will receive a protective badge featuring the school crest. And, Sebastian added with a sly grin, this year, every student will receive a special gift. As he spoke, orbs of light, controlled by Sebastian, floated down and landed in the hands of each student. A Hogwarts navigation map. New students will never have to worry about getting lost. It's simple to use. Try it out when you return to your common rooms. And let's give a round of applause to Fred and George Weasley. Amidst the warm applause, Ron stared at his brothers in disbelief, muttering, "No way. They didn't say a word all summer." "Nothing's impossible, little Ronnie," Fred said, patting Ron on the shoulder. He and George then bowed theatrically to the crowd. After the feast, Sebastian returned to Swan Manor. As soon as he walked in, he threw his arms open and called out to Mia, who was sitting on the sofa, "Honey, now that it's just us, let's play a fun game." Mia dodged his hug, giggling. "Come and get me." Chapter 83 Severus, why are you turning your elbows towards Gryffindor? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Just a week in, Gryffindor was already way ahead in the house points. Sebastian glanced at the rubies piling up in the Gryffindor column and felt a knot forming in his stomach. What was going on? Hadn't school just started 10 days ago? How did Gryffindor rack up almost 50 points more than second place? After asking around, Sebastian got the story and stormed toward the dungeons. He'd been worried Dumbledore would pull some last-minute points out of thin air for Gryffindor at the end of the year. Turns out, he didn't even have to wait. The head of Slytherin was already a Benedict Arnold, bang, the door to Snape's office flew open. Snape, busy brewing a potion, barely glanced up before returning his attention to the bubbling tonic in his cauldron. Looks like Professor Swann's head is stuck in the clouds again. Forgotten all his manners, has he? Oh, wait. I get it. Probably because Professor Swann's lost his mojo, with Lockhart hogging all the spotlight. But hey, maybe don't take it out on the poor, defenseless potions master, okay? Sebastian knew he couldn't win a battle of wits with Snape, so, he just ignored the sarcastic jabs. Immunity activated. Besides, he knew how to get under Snape's skin. Sebastian had a few tricks up his sleeve. He focused his magical senses, carefully analyzing the potion in the cauldron. Added the black root too late. Could have been a real masterpiece otherwise. Snape's breathing hitched. He was about to fire back a retort when Sebastian cut him off. Don't talk, just stir the potion. This potion was already a disaster. Snape gritted his teeth, shoved the stirring rod into the mixture, and stirred clockwise 7 times. Once the potion settled, he stood up straight, glared sideways at Sebastian, and snapped, "What do you want? What's the deal with Gryffindor's points? Care to explain it to your friendly neighborhood potions master?" "Oh," Snape drawled, flicking his robes as he returned to his seat. "Just some perfectly reasonable extra credit." "Reasonable?" Sebastian practically choked on his own anger. He stood up, mimicking Snape's drawl. "Mr. Potter, congratulations on becoming a first-year potions assistant. 10 points to Gryffindor. Mr. Potter's posture is perfect when brewing potions. 5 points. Mr. Potter is the first to brew the scabies potion. 5 points to Gryffindor. Mr. Potter, you warned Neville about the porcupine quills just in time. 20 points for averting a disaster." Snape's face darkened with each imitation. He straightened his robes and replied in a flat voice. "As the potions professor, I'm entitled to reward exceptional students." "That's so stubborn. Good thing Voldemort never realized your mouth was a top-tier alchemy ingredient. If he'd used your tongue to make a Horcrux, not even basilisk venom or the sword of Gryffindor could have stopped him," Sebastian sneered, pulling out a parchment filled with teaching assistant rules and slapping it down in front of Snape. "Take a break from worshipping Harry and read the fine print, would you? Hogwarts pays the teaching assistant. It's Harry's job to help his classmates in potions. That's what he's there for. Showering him with points is overkill. Try to keep it professional." Snape grabbed the parchment, his face expressionless as he scanned the regulations. Knock, 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 someone rapped on the office door. Snape didn't even look up from the rules. "Come in." The door opened, and a third-year Slytherin wizard rushed in, visibly relieved to see Sebastian. "Thank God, Professor Swann, you're here. You gotta get to the Great Hall. Malfoy's about to duel with Potter." Sebastian shot a look at Snape. Then they both headed for the Great Hall. Before they even reached the entrance, they could hear Ron yelling. "Fred and George, you traitors. Instead of helping Harry take on Slytherin, you agree with Marcus to find a professor. You two just made the team and you're already sucking up to the captain, aren't you? You spineless weasels." "Ron." Hermione's voice cut through the noise. "This is exactly the kind of situation that requires a professor's intervention." "Little Ronnie," Fred said with a grin, "it's not about Marcus. Even if he didn't send for Professor Swann, we would have." "Yeah," George chimed in. "Whenever there's a student conflict between houses, you're supposed to get Professor Swann involved. That's the rule." "I told you, don't call me Little Ronnie," Ron grumbled under his breath, still a little annoyed by the twins' explanation. "Professor Swann's a Slytherin. Who's to say he won't be biased?" "Relax," Marcus chuckled from behind Malfoy. "Professor Swann's always fair." Marcus thought. He knew that from personal experience. Last year, when he joined the Quidditch team, he got into a scrap with some students from other houses. Professor Swann found out what really happened. Not only did he deduct points from Slytherin, but he also made Marcus stand outside the Great Hall during lunch for an hour reciting the school rules. Ever since then, Marcus had been a staunch advocate for campus peace. Conflicts between houses had gone down. After all, who wanted to stand outside the Great Hall and be gawked at like a zoo animal? Marcus started grinning. Hermione frowned. She couldn't shake a feeling of unease. She glanced around. Aside from Malfoy's nervous expression, everyone looked strangely calm. The Gryffindor and Slytherin students seemed to be enjoying the spectacle. It was as if they were looking forward to Professor Swann's arrival. "The professor's here!" A voice shouted from the back, and the crowd parted, revealing a cluster of younger students. Sebastian walked through the throng. He pieced together that the commotion stemmed from Neville's Remembrall incident during the first flying lesson. "Mr. Malfoy, 10 points from Slytherin for bullying a classmate." Sebastian cleared a space and addressed both Malfoy and Harry. "You want to duel? Fine. Professor Snape and I will be the witnesses." "All right, both players take your positions." Chapter 84 Malfoy, I won't give up. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Standing in the duel arena the professor had cleared, Malfoy was freaking out. What was going on? This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. Potter was supposed to agree to a duel at midnight and then get busted by Filch. Why were they surrounded as soon as the duel was mentioned, and why did everyone look like they were enjoying a show? Why weren't his Slytherin buddies sticking up for him? And why did Marcus call the professor over? He couldn't make sense of any of it. Even though Malfoy was panicking, he kept up appearances, trying to look fearless. He was a little nervous, sure, but he didn't think he'd actually lose to the savior Potter. After all, he was a Malfoy. The whispers of his classmates faded until he couldn't hear them anymore. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to calm down. He tightened his grip on his wand, focusing all his attention on Potter. "All right, Potter," he thought. "Let me show you the power of a pure-blood family. From today on, nobody will underestimate the Malfoy name. This is just a little duel, so let's keep it simple, no need for bows or anything. Listen to my signal. 3, 2, 1, begin. Go." As soon as the countdown finished, Malfoy went on the offensive, hoping to overwhelm Potter right off the bat, but to his shock, Potter easily sidestepped his spell. Impossible. How could he dodge that so easily? There's no way Potter's that good. Malfoy couldn't believe it. He gritted his teeth and kept firing spells. His breathing got heavier, and he realized that Potter was dodging everything with just a few simple moves. Malfoy was getting seriously frustrated. He couldn't even graze Potter, and he felt like his reputation was becoming a joke. The awful thought popped into his head. He was going to lose. A wave of anger washed over him. He refused to lose like some kind of clown, so he yelled at Potter. "Potter! Are you just going to hide like a rat? Fight back. Show me what you've got." Hearing Malfoy's outburst, Harry was confused. Why was Malfoy so mad? He was only dodging the spells to get a sense of Malfoy's skills. It was his first time dueling someone his age, and he wanted to see what he was up against, but honestly, Malfoy's wand movements were so telegraphed, it was easy to see where his spells were going. Dodging a few spells was no big deal, right? Malfoy wasn't all that strong, and Harry figured he could win without much trouble. Still, he didn't want to underestimate Malfoy. The guy came from a pure-blood family. He might have some tricks up his sleeve. Harry glanced at Hermione and Ron, who were watching with their mouths hanging open. Then it hit him. He'd overestimated Malfoy. Feeling a bit bored, Harry pointed his wand at Malfoy. He remembered Professor Swann's instructions. Once you attack, make sure the other guy can't fight back, magically or physically. Expelliarmus. Petrificus totalis. Incarcerus. Point 3 spells in a row. Malfoy's wand flew out of his hand, his face froze in shock, and thick ropes bound him from head to toe. Whoa! The young wizards watching gasped. Was this really Harry Potter? He was incredible. Was this the power of the savior? Everyone realized the duel was over. The Gryffindors swarmed Harry. "Harry!" Ron shouted, "How did you get so good?" "Yeah, tell us." The little wizards chimed in. Students from the other houses stayed to listen, blushing from all the attention. Harry mumbled, "Professor Swann taught me." Instantly, Harry was surrounded. Everyone mobbed Sebastian, practically shoving Snape out of the way. Hermione elbowed her way to the front, shouting, "Professor Swann, I want your help too." "Yeah. We need help too. Professor, you can't play favorites. We're your students too. Professor Swann, teach us how to duel." Harry's display had made all the little wizards incredibly jealous. Now that they knew the secret, they weren't about to miss out on the chance to get stronger too. Sebastian held up a hand to quiet them down, looking thoughtful. He'd planned to improve his students' combat skills all along, not so they could fight for Hogwarts, but at least so they could protect themselves. Maybe he could move up his plans. He waved his hand, quieting the students. "Since you're all interested, I've decided to start a dueling club. Everyone meet in the Great Hall at 8 o'clock on Friday night." Dismissed. Once the students had cleared out, Sebastian looked at Malfoy, who had been freed from his binds. He stood quietly next to Snape, all his arrogance gone. Sebastian had mixed feelings about Draco Malfoy. From his first appearance in the books, it was clear that he was a spoiled kid. His first question was always, what will happen to my dad? He was proud of his pure-blood status and acted like the whole magical world should bow down to him, but after Voldemort returned, Malfoy's world turned upside down. He saw his powerful father, Lucius Malfoy, groveling before the Dark Lord. Malfoy Manor, the family estate he'd been so proud of, was occupied by Voldemort as his headquarters. All of that shattered Malfoy's pride. He began to question things and suffered internally. Maybe that was why he publicly denied recognizing Harry when they were captured at Malfoy Manor, saving Harry's and the others' lives. Sebastian felt that maybe from that moment on, Malfoy didn't want Voldemort to win. From the moment Malfoy started school, Sebastian had planned to help him, but lecturing or scolding wouldn't work with this proud kid. Now, thanks to Harry, Malfoy's arrogance had been defeated. Sebastian hoped Malfoy would see the light and realize that bloodlines didn't matter. He wanted Malfoy to change. Maybe he wouldn't become a hero overnight, but at least he wouldn't be just a spoiled kid full of pride and prejudice. Sebastian had even higher hopes for Malfoy. He thought Draco had real talent that shouldn't be wasted. As a Slytherin himself, Sebastian wanted to train him to become a leader in the house. Sebastian walked over to Malfoy and patted his shoulder gently. Draco, come with me. Let's talk in my office. Chapter 85, Confrontation between Family Heirs. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The two of them walked to Sebastian's office. Sebastian looked at Draco, who was slumped on the sofa, and asked gently, Draco, what can I get you to drink? Some pumpkin juice. It's pretty good. Or, if you're really feeling down, I could make an exception and give you some non-alcoholic butterbeer. Draco didn't look up. No, Professor. I'm not thirsty. His voice was hoarse. Sebastian raised an eyebrow. This hit him harder than I thought. Is he having a full-blown existential crisis? Can't let that happen. Sebastian didn't want to see Draco fall into such a dark place. He needs a dose of tough love. From what Sebastian knew, the Malfoy family always put family first. So, to get through to this kid, I need to focus on what he cares about most. His family. Sebastian shifted in his seat and prepared to deliver his best pep talk. Before we start talking, I want you to pick one of two options. Do you want me to treat you like a kid and have a typical professor-student chat? Or, should we talk like adults, as heirs to pure-blood families? Sebastian's tone grew serious. Draco, look me in the eye and tell me what you choose. Draco perked up slightly at Sebastian's words. I choose the second one. All right. In that case, forget that I'm a professor. You'll be seeing the side of me that's a ruthless businessman. Our conversation will be blunt and cold. Are you sure you want that? Draco hesitated, hearing the seriousness in Sebastian's voice. He hated being lectured, even by a professor. Besides, he had always taken pride in being the heir to the Malfoy family. He wanted to have an equal conversation with Sebastian as one pure-blood heir to another. He wanted to prove himself, to show Sebastian that he was worthy of his inheritance. Thinking this, Draco straightened up and met Sebastian's gaze with his still red eyes. I choose to be the heir to the Malfoy family. I'm sure. In that case, Mr. Malfoy, Sebastian began smoothly, let's play a game. Let's pretend. Let's say your father hands over the entire Malfoy family fortune to you right now. What's your plan? How would you make it grow? Draco was caught off guard. He'd never really thought about the family business in detail. He didn't have an answer, but he didn't want to look weak, so he stammered, I just keep things running the way they are. I'm sure my father would guide me. Sebastian smiled gently at the naive response. Oh, just maintain the status quo. I thought you'd have bigger ambitions. I thought you'd want to use your own skills to take the Malfoy Empire to the next level. Draco felt a flicker of annoyance at the teasing words, but before he could reply, Sebastian continued. Let me ask you this, when you're in charge, what kind of people will you hire? Pure-bloods, half-bloods, or Muggleborns? Pure-bloods, of course. Draco replied confidently. Sebastian chuckled. We're all pure-bloods. Why would we work for your family? Wouldn't we rather run our own empires? Okay, let's say I'm a pure-blood wizard without a fortune. There are a million places to work in the wizarding world. What makes the Malfoy family so special that I'd want to work there? Draco's confidence wavered. Then, I'd hire half-bloods. If I had to, I could even hire muggleborns. Mr. Malfoy, that answer is almost funny, Sebastian said, chuckling. Don't you look down on them? Have you thought about how you treat half-blood and muggleborn wizards? From what I've seen, you always act superior, and you're openly contemptuous. Let's be honest, you probably think half-bloods are just slightly better than dirt, and muggleborns are even worse. They're just mudbloods, right? Draco started to protest, but knew Sebastian was right. Those were his true feelings, but so what? So what if the Malfoy family looked down on everyone? He could always just pay a little more. Plenty of people would line up to work for him, he could say that to his employees with total confidence. If you don't want the job, someone else will, as if reading his mind, Sebastian smiled slightly. Do you think you'll always have people willing to work for you? 20 years ago, that attitude wouldn't have been a problem. Back then, pure-blood families controlled over 90% of the wizarding economy. Everyone offered the same conditions, and everyone had the same prejudice. Muggleborns basically had no choice. But, Sebastian said, his tone changing, have you stopped to think about how things have changed since Swann alchemy started promoting equality? On one side you have Swann alchemy, who treat all wizards fairly. On the other you have the Malfoys, who act like they're better than everyone. Which would you choose? What if, someday, the Muggleborns and Half-Bloods team up and decide to boycott the Malfoy family? What if Swann alchemy decides to cut ties with you? What will you do then? Draco was getting flustered. He remembered what his father had said, the Malfoy family's success was tied to Swann alchemy. If Swann alchemy abandoned them, their business would take a huge hit. That's impossible, right? Draco's voice trembled. Swann alchemy and the Malfoy family are very close. Really? Sebastian gave him a knowing smile, seeing Draco's panic. Mr. Malfoy, do you want to hear the truth? The cold, hard truth about the adult world. All partnerships are based on self-interest. If the Malfoy family gets a bad reputation, and that starts hurting Swann alchemy won't hesitate to find another partner. And when that happens, how many people do you think will be lining up to take a shot at the Malfoy family? Draco was completely deflated. He didn't understand why Sebastian was telling him all this. Was Swann alchemy already planning to ditch the Malfoys? Seeing Draco's anxiety, Sebastian leaned back in his chair and spoke casually. Mr. Malfoy, you're nowhere near as sharp as your father was at your age. He was already plotting ways to expand the Malfoy empire. If you keep acting like a spoiled brat, I guarantee the Malfoy family will fall. So, tell me, what do you want to do? What should you do? What will you do? Chapter 86 Professor, thank you for your chicken soup. You are listening at novelfull.audio. What am I gonna do? Malfoy couldn't even stand up straight. He slumped there, that question just bouncing around in his head. Truth was, he was clueless. Then, a thought sparked, I'm such an idiot, he realized. There's no way the professor's just messing with me. So, he looked up, cautiously asking, Professor Swann, how about we talk, professor to student? Will you tell me what to do? Ha 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 ha, Sebastian burst out laughing. He loved how quick-witted and adaptable Slytherins could be. If it were a Gryffindor, some hard-headed lion, they'd probably be yelling at me, calling me names. Sebastian got up and sat down next to Malfoy. Draco, the answer's pretty simple, actually. Treat everyone fairly, make friends. The more friends you have, the smoother things will go. The British wizarding world's tiny. One school. That means everyone you meet here is a potential customer, a potential employee. Think about it. If you tick everyone off now, aren't you just creating enemies for the Malfoy family down the road? Draco, Sebastian shifted gears. What's the most important thing for us Slytherins, you think? What quality do you value most? Was that even a question? Malfoy blurted, blood. Sebastian smiled and shook his head. If blood was all that mattered, there wouldn't be any half-bloods in Slytherin. Remember, what we value is shrewdness and ambition. A sharp mind keeps you from doing dumb stuff, like making enemies left and right. And ambition? That helps you figure out what you're after. Once you have that drive, you won't settle for average. As for blood? Haha. Sebastian scoffed, his expression dripping with disdain. If blood meant everything, there wouldn't be so many broke pureblood families running around. If blood meant everything, you wouldn't have gotten creamed by Potter in that duel. Malfoy's face fell, he felt a surge of resentment. The professors were always playing favorites with Potter. It'd be one thing if it were other professors, but even his own head of house was on Potter's side, even made him an assistant in potions, and the worst part. Potter's mad dueling skills. Taught by this Slytherin professor, Malfoy was a mess of resentment and confusion. He's a Slytherin, so why does Potter get all the breaks? He looked up at Sebastian, his eyes pleading and lost. Seeing Malfoy's misery, Sebastian patted his head. Draco, you're actually pretty good. That stunning spell's not easy. You being able to pull it off at your age is impressive. Normally, second-year wizards have trouble with offensive spells that strong. Doesn't matter, Malfoy mumbled, I still lost to Potter without even landing a hit. Don't sell yourself short. Only first year better than you is Harry Potter, far as I can tell. Professor Swann, can I still catch up to Potter? Even beat him? Better than Potter? Sebastian grinned. Your only competition is yourself. Draco, don't let someone else's success make you feel like you're failing. Everyone moves at their own pace. Work hard, but don't rush it. Success takes time. But... Malfoy whispered, I still want to be better than Potter. If you really want to surpass Potter, you gotta be relentless, gotta grind. Aim to be great. Leave the past behind. Become a better version of yourself. Remember this, you don't know what you're capable of until you go all in. You were born to be a mountain, not a blade of grass. After all that encouragement, Malfoy was fired up. Ready to go practice right then and there. Seeing the fire in Malfoy's eyes, Sebastian knew it was time to seal the deal. Draco, Professor Snape and I have high hopes for you. Out of all the Slytherins, you've got the talent to go far. We want you to step up, be someone the whole house can look up to. Sebastian stood and offered Malfoy his hand. Draco, let's work together, make Slytherin the best it can be. Not wanting to let Sebastian down, Malfoy jumped up and shook his hand firmly. Professor Swann, I'll turn things around. I won't let you or Professor Snape down. Malfoy left, practically skipping, head held high. After the duel, Ron couldn't stop bugging Harry to teach him some moves so he could show off at the dueling club. Hermione joined in, wanting to learn a few spells, too, so, after dinner, Harry took Ron and Hermione out to an open spot by the Quidditch pitch and they practiced until it was dark. Then they headed back towards the castle, only to find the stairs had shifted, leaving them on the fourth-floor corridor. I think, Hermione gasped, looking at the dusty, unused hallway, this is the corridor Dumbledore said was off-limits. Then what are we waiting for? Let's get out of here. Ron's knees were knocking, but just as they turned to leave, they saw a cat sitting on the stairs. It's Filch's cat, Hermione said, panicking. If we get caught, Gryffindor's gonna lose a ton of points. We could even get expelled. She pointed to a room at the end of the hall. Quick, hide in there. Real helpful, you are. Ron yanked on the doorknob. It wouldn't budge. Locked. We're done for. Move it, you useless lump. Hermione pushed Ron aside, pulled out her wand, and pointed it at the lock. Alhamra, the lock clicked open, and they piled into the room, holding their breath. Harry pressed his ear to the door. After a few minutes, he heard Filch leave, muttering to himself. Filch is gone. Let's go. No one answered. Harry turned around to see what was going on. and his blood ran cold. A massive three-headed dog was asleep in the room, its breath so foul Harry could barely keep his eyes open. Harry was terrified, knowing he couldn't hurt the beast even if he tried, so, he tugged Hermione and Ron backward, inching out the door as the dog's eyes snapped open. They bolted, not stopping until they were back in the Gryffindor common room, panting. "There's a monster like that in the castle," Ron said, relieved to be alive. "If that thing had been awake, my mom wouldn't have been able to find enough of me to bury." Unbelievable. So much for the safest school in the wizarding world. Hermione was exhausted. She thought back to what she'd seen. It looked like the dog was guarding something. Standing right on top of a trapdoor. Guarding something? Harry's mind immediately went to the package he and Hagrid had taken from Gringotts. He was about to say something when Hermione cut him off. "We're lucky we didn't get eaten or kicked out. Harry, thanks for teaching me spells today. I'm gonna crash, if you don't mind. Gotta get my beauty sleep for the dueling club tomorrow." Chapter 87 Luxurious Teaching Team. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At 8 o'clock on Friday night, Hogwarts' Great Hall had been completely transformed. The tables and chairs were gone, making the place feel huge. The hall was packed with students eager to join the dueling club, plus plenty more just there to watch. In the center stood a magnificent dueling arena, students clustered around it, buzzing with excitement, looking forward to the magical showdown. "Isn't Professor Swann the Muggle Studies professor? How reliable is he to teach us dueling? Didn't you see yesterday's duel? Potter himself said Professor Swann taught him." "Yeah, but it still feels weird. Professor Lockhart would be way better. He's so powerful on TV." "Totally. Lockhart's stronger, for sure. Swann doesn't really have any accomplishments. Last semester, when Fred got caught in the Forbidden Forest, Snape rescued him. Swann just happened to be there to pick them up." Hearing that, Fred couldn't help rolling his eyes. Family members. People actually doubting Professor Swann. If they only knew what really happened last semester, they'd be scared out of their minds. Ugh. He was under a gag order. Otherwise, he'd jump in and set them straight. Even though he couldn't spill the beans, Fred made sure to set his friends right. "Don't listen to them. Professor Swann is way more powerful than you think." Harry completely agreed. After 2 months of intense training with Sebastian, he had a solid understanding of just how strong Sebastian was. Harry whispered to Ron and Hermione, "Professor Swann's coming. Pay attention. He's incredible." Just then, a shout went up near the entrance. "The professors are here." As the 5 professors walked in, the hall exploded. Hundreds of students buzzed, excitedly commenting on the professor lineup. "Oh my god, Professor Lockhart looks so handsome. That sky blue robe is perfect. Professor Flitwick, your battle gear is awesome. You look so smart. Professor Snape looks great, especially in black. So stylish. Professor McGonagall is so elegant. I want to be like her when I grow up. Professor Swann can't really cut it, but he's smart enough to get the other professors involved." Lockhart strode to a specially made platform behind the arena, smiled at the students, and cast a sonorous charm on himself. "Good evening, everyone. I'm your host, Lockhart. Tonight, 4 masters will reveal the secrets of dueling. Let's give them a huge round of applause." Thunderous applause erupted. The students were thrilled with the lineup. "Professor Lockhart, are you going to duel?" "I'm not quite at that level. I wouldn't want to embarrass myself," Lockhart chuckled. "My job tonight is to provide the play-by-play. Professor Lockhart is so humble, such a gentleman." Several young witches swooned. "Where's Professor Sprout?" A voice called from the Hufflepuff section. Lockhart replied with an exaggerated expression, "Professor Sprout's worried her magical plants might be a little too lethal. She doesn't want to accidentally hurt anyone." Watching Lockhart handle things so smoothly, Sebastian relaxed. After hearing about the dueling club, Lockhart had practically begged Sebastian to be involved. Knowing Lockhart's gift for gab, Sebastian made him host and commentator. It was definitely the right call to let Lockhart handle the QA. Alright, let's not keep everyone waiting. Time to turn our attention to the arena. The 4 professors will now present 3 exciting exhibition matches. First, Professor McGonagall and Professor Swann will demonstrate the use of transfiguration in a duel. The students had suspected transfiguration would be involved when Professor McGonagall showed up, but none of them could really picture how it would work in a duel. In their minds, duels were about 2 people blasting spells at each other, like Malfoy and Potter. So, when Professor McGonagall stepped onto the stage, everyone's eyes widened, eager not to miss a thing. Sebastian had already placed several chairs on the stage and handed Professor McGonagall a box of wizard chess. He nodded to her and stepped back. Professor McGonagall, ditching her usual serious look, explained with a smile, transfiguration is a delicate subject. Skillful use can give us many options in a fight. Usually, a spell has a bright flash, like the stunning spell. Professor McGonagall raised her wand and a red spell shot toward the auditorium wall. But that flash often gives away our intentions. Transfiguration is different. No flash, making it much more discreet. As she spoke, several chairs quietly transformed into majestic lions. Once you master transfiguration, you can use anything around your opponent to attack them unexpectedly, leaving them defenseless. Cool, the students gasped. The lions looked real, and utterly ferocious, ready to attack at any moment. One clever student remembered the wizard chess and shouted, "Professor McGonagall, what about the chess? Is that for transfiguration too?" "Of course," Professor McGonagall replied. "There are times when you don't have ready-made transfiguration props around. That's when small items you carry can come in handy. Take wizard chess, for example." Professor McGonagall pulled out a few chess pieces and tossed them into the air. As they landed, they transformed into towering giants, over 10 feet tall, looking like they'd just woken up. They stood guard around Professor McGonagall, protecting her. Merlin's beard. The visual impact was stunning, so cool. "I want to learn that." Hermione's eyes sparkled. She thought Professor McGonagall looked like a queen, surrounded by her guards. Ron bounced up and down. "Just carry a box of wizard chess, and you've got an army." "Awesome," but while everyone else was excited, Harry felt a little down. Why did Sebastian say he and transfiguration didn't mix? He said he had a straightforward mind, better suited for fast attacks. He hadn't thought much about it, but transfiguration looked so cool. Harry stared at Professor McGonagall, envy in his eyes. Oh, well. He'd try to learn it anyway, it couldn't hurt to try. Chapter 88, Wonderful Exhibition Match. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Seeing the little wizard's eyes widen in amazement, Professor McGonagall's smile broadened. She crossed her arms, nodding slightly, confident this is just a taste of what's to come. Look on her face, Professor McGonagall turned to Sebastian. "Sebastian, if you would be so kind as to assist me." Sebastian readily agreed, moving to the opposite side of the dueling platform. He held his wand up, giving Professor McGonagall a respectful bow. Lockhart's voice boomed, perfectly timed. 3, 2, 1, go. The instant he finished, Sebastian launched his attack. Collapse. Undaunted by the incoming spell, Professor McGonagall calmly conjured a lion, which leaped up to intercept the attack. "See that?" Lockhart eagerly explained from the platform. "Transfiguration makes it a cinch to block an enemy's spell. But if you don't attack often enough, or with enough power, you'll never break through those transfigured defenses." Notice how all the transformed objects in the arena are bearing down on Professor Swann. Yet, her spell keeps them pinned behind the center line. Professor McGonagall remains unfazed by the barrage of curses. With a simple flick of her wrist, she redirects every curse onto the surrounding targets. Elegant. Pure elegance, the unfolding scenario played out exactly as Sebastian had envisioned. This was simply the first act of the exhibition match. He and Professor McGonagall had agreed to start by demonstrating how transfiguration could be used to counter spells. Satisfied that the lesson had landed, Sebastian increased the power of his magic, moving the exhibition into its second phase, showcasing the diverse applications of transfiguration in offense. Whoa! The little wizards exclaimed again. They watched as the lions on the field fractured and splintered into wooden shards. Before their eyes, these splinters morphed into a dense swarm of mice, all charging toward Sebastian. In response, Sebastian unleashed a wide-area attack spell, incinerating the rodents with blazing flames. Professor Swann's use of fire to neutralize his opponent's attack is inspired, Lockhart announced. However, we must not drop our guard against a transfiguration master. No sooner had the words left his mouth than the flames on the ground twisted and coalesced into fiery lions, attacking Sebastian once more. Seeing the fiery lions approach, Sebastian knew it was time for the grand finale, a transfiguration spectacle for the ages. Water from the spring. Immediately, thick columns of water shot into the air. With a wave of Sebastian's wand, the streams transformed into enormous water pythons, constricting the fiery lions. Next, he flung several wizard chess pieces into the arena. The chess pieces grew instantly into massive warriors, engaging in a fierce battle with the giant beside Professor McGonagall. Like two seasoned armies, they clashed in the heart of the auditorium. The resounding clang of weapons created an unforgettable sight. Under Sebastian's expert command, the transfigured soldiers fell one by one, ultimately succumbing together. Then, with a flick of his wand, he cleared the arena of the remaining debris. Brilliant! Lockhart shouted. Let's give our professors a tremendous round of applause. Amidst the students' cheers, a smiling Professor McGonagall left the stage. The auditorium was lit by the evening lamps as bright as day, and the air was thick with excitement. Without waiting for Lockhart's announcement, Professor Flitwick hurried onto the platform, eager to showcase his own spellcasting finesse. For tonight's exhibition, he had donned the very uniform he wore in his dueling competitions of yesteryear. Though the battle robes were aged, they still carried a certain solemnity, each mark and tear a testament to his past glories. As a former dueling champion, he had a wealth of insights to share. Clearing his throat, he addressed the young wizards. I'd like to offer some dueling tips, seen through the lens of spellcasting. If you aspire to become a proficient duelist, it's best to focus on mastering spells from three key areas: attack, defense, and disruption. For example, the Stunner and Petrification charm for attack, the Shield charm for defense, and the Smokescreen spell for creating openings. Furthermore, Professor Flitwick's voice rose slightly. The fusion of different spells can yield remarkable results. The water-making spell, for instance, when combined with the freezing charm, can create ice shards to strike an opponent. As he spoke, he glanced at Sebastian and introduced him to the young wizards. Professor Swann excels in this precise area. Professor Flitwick was, without a doubt, a spellcasting virtuoso. He broke down the fundamentals of spell combinations, making them easy for the young wizards to understand. In his hands, even simple spells could be wielded in countless ways. The young wizards listened intently, nodding along as some of the more astute ones hastily scribbled notes with their shorthand quills. Magic is vast and complex. If you seek to excel, you must dedicate countless hours to studying and practicing. Then, Professor Flitwick beckoned Sebastian to his side, and together they presented a spellcasting demonstration for the young wizards. His movements were fluid and refined, his wand seemingly less of a tool and more of a conductor's baton. The spells themselves were an invisible orchestra at his command. Sebastian met each of Professor Flitwick's attacks head-on, consistently selecting the most effective counterspell. The sheer variety of spells left Lockhart speechless, utterly bewildered by the underlying strategy. Fortunately, Professor McGonagall recognized his plight and stepped in to offer her own explanations. With Professor McGonagall's guidance, the young wizards gradually grasped the principles at play, cheering for the professors on the stage. Finally, as the little wizards roared their approval, the two professors lowered their wands in unison, bringing the demonstration to a close. Following Professor Flitwick, Snape strode onto the stage. His black robes billowed behind him, whistling as he marched briskly. What's Snape going to teach us? Ron, terrified of the stern potions master, whispered to Harry. How to poison our opponents. Ron. Harry frowned slightly at Ron's comment. I think Professor Snape is pretty powerful too. Let's just wait and see. Snape stood on the platform, his gaze sweeping over the crowd with an impassive expression. The young wizards grew so silent that it felt like they were back in potions class. Unlike the previous two professors, Snape announced, I will not show you flashy spell combinations. What you need to learn is how to respond to danger. Chapter 89 The Curse of the World can only be broken by speed. You are listening at novelfull.audio. How to respond to danger. At Hogwarts? Is it even necessary? But it sounds practical. The young wizards exchanged glances, then turned their shining eyes to Snape, meeting their expectant gazes. Snape said slowly, normally, this would be covered by Professor Sprout, but it seems she's completely incapable. Oh, a suppressed murmur rippled through the crowd, Professor Sprout. That had to be a jab at Professor Quirrell. After all, he was the only one at Hogwarts who reeked of garlic. Harry and Ron grinned at each other, a spark of excitement in their eyes. Truthfully, Harry had arrived at Hogwarts with high expectations. He'd imagined every professor would be top-notch, like Snape, but Professor Quirrell had shattered that illusion. During class, Professor Quirrell just stammered as he read from the textbook, contributing nothing original, and seeming to simply kill time. He didn't even care if the students slept through his lectures, as if it were no concern of his. In that sense, Harry actually preferred Professor Snape, because even though Snape was strict in potions, he genuinely wanted the students to learn something. Hearing Snape's sarcasm, Professor McGonagall started to speak, wanting to offer a reminder, but after considering Professor Quirrell's poor performance, she remained silent. Let me remind you all that life isn't a dueling club. When you're in danger, those dark wizard scum won't follow any rules of engagement. Snape ignored the reactions and continued in his monotone. Therefore, the first spell I recommend you master is the Screaming Curse, or Alarm Charm. Many dark wizards are like rats in the sewers. The slightest noise will send them running. Next, you need to master the Shield Charm. Remember to keep your protective badge handy. After all, many dark wizards prefer sneak attacks. It will give you a chance to fight back, or escape. Finally, Snape paused, his voice losing its calm edge, becoming much more serious. If it's unavoidable, don't hesitate. Take the initiative and seize the opportunity. Someone once told me a saying. Snape glanced in Sebastian's direction, strike first, strike hard, no mercy. Remember one thing, better to rot in Azkaban than have your loved ones weeping at your grave. Snape spoke freely, sharing his experience. Professor McGonagall almost interrupted Snape several times. She felt the young wizard shouldn't be exposed to some of this yet. She hesitated, but each time she remembered the arrangement on the fourth-floor corridor. Never mind. The wizarding world was becoming unstable again. It wouldn't hurt for the little ones to know this in advance. Professor Snape. A Slytherin student asked boldly, what suggestions do you have for taking the initiative? Suggestions? Snape smiled. Unleash your most powerful attack spell in a saturation attack, leaving the enemy no room to breathe. Next, I'll have Professor Swann demonstrate the fast attack flow for everyone. Younger students, please note that while you know fewer spells, this is the most suitable attack method for you. Fast attack flow. Harry's eyes lit up. He was familiar with this. He was currently using that style. He watched the two professors intently, wanting to see how his skill measured up to theirs. Snape and Sebastian faced off in the ring, their eyes as sharp as hawks. 3-2-1, go. At the signal, they waved their wands almost simultaneously, unleashing a storm of spells. Snape slashed the air with a powerful spell. Sebastian easily deflected it, immediately launching a counterattack. The flashing magical light lit up the entire hall. They were light on their feet, using the simplest moves to dodge each other's attacks. Spells flew back and forth, crisscrossing in the air, producing brilliant flashes of light. The young wizard stared, mesmerized, at the dazzling display. The speed of the spells was so great they hardly dared blink for fear of missing something. Unlike the elegance of Professor McGonagall and Professor Flitwick, these two professors projected one feeling, force. The direct attacks were violent and precise, and every impact vibrated through the viewers. Spells flew across the arena as the two powerful wizards demonstrated the ultimate charm of magical dueling. As the duel progressed, the fight grew more intense, and the magical light in the ring shone even brighter. Harry grew more and more excited and nervous. In his eyes, the fight was too intense, and he didn't want to see either of them hurt. Suddenly, Snape and Sebastian stopped, the light fading from the ring as calm descended once again. Silence filled the hall, followed by a thunderous ovation. "That was awesome, Professor. Totally awesome. Holy smokes. Who said you couldn't hit a professor in Muggle studies? Professor Snape is amazing. No wonder he always wanted to teach defense against the dark arts. Don't stop. There's no winner yet." For a moment, the hall was in chaos, filled with shouts. Fred, beside himself, kept telling George that they hadn't even seen the professors at their best. Harry clapped until his hands were red, his eyes glued to the two professors. "See that, Ron? Your eyes can't even follow the spells. That's a real fast attack style. That's what Professor Swann suggested. It's not just about speed," Hermione called out to her classmates. "The professors are much more powerful with the same spells. We also need to work on the power of the spells." Sebastian, on the stage, struggled to quiet the young wizards. "Eager to show off your skills, are you? Don't worry. Even the best duelists started out by learning spells. Next, we'll begin tonight's theme, practicing the petrification spell. Pay attention to my wand movements," he said, seeing the young wizards imitating him, "and remember the incantation, Petrificus Totalis." Sebastian waved his wand, and a thick cushion appeared behind each wizard. "Pair up and practice. Begin." Chapter 90, How Can a Mere Sum of Gold Disturb My Heart? You are listening at novelfull.audio. At the command, the young wizards scattered to practice with their partners. Harry was mortified to find himself the odd man out. Nobody wanted to team up with him. "Sorry, mate," Ron said apologetically, "you're just too good. I don't want to get blasted." "Harry," Hermione added, also a bit embarrassed, "seriously, would you consider partnering with a second or third year, partner with an upperclassman?" Harry hesitated. He looked around, everyone had already formed teams. He'd hoped to find Neville, but he'd already paired up with Seamus. Boom! Harry jumped, startled. He looked closer and saw that Seamus's spell had backfired, again. His face was covered in soot, and his hair had turned into a giant afro. The nearby wizards were shocked at first, then erupted in laughter. Sebastian, hearing the commotion, came over. After making sure Seamus was okay, he let them continue practicing. Then he noticed Harry standing alone. After learning what happened, Sebastian scanned the room and spotted Malfoy, also solo, over in Slytherin. What a coincidence. Perfect pairing. Their skills were pretty evenly matched for first years. Sebastian went over to Malfoy and whispered something in his ear. After getting Malfoy's okay, Sebastian brought him over to Harry and announced that they would be partners. As soon as Sebastian left, Malfoy grinned, a nasty glint in his eyes. "Potter, everyone else is scared of you, but not me. I was caught off guard yesterday, but I won't give you an inch today. Let's go." In the Great Hall, young wizards paired off, practicing dueling with gusto. Even Fred and George, the prank-loving twins, were uncharacteristically focused. They stood opposite each other, practicing spells with precision and seriousness. Percy, standing beside Penelope, gently adjusted her stance, his expression focused and almost reverent. Marcus lay stiffly on a mat, staring at the ceiling, patiently waiting for someone to lift the curse on him. As time wore on, the hall grew increasingly crowded and chaotic. Now and again, a stray spell would accidentally hit an unsuspecting wizard. Every corner was packed. Spells flashed, shouts echoed, and the sounds of spells colliding created a cacophony that made Sebastian's head spin. Sebastian also noticed that some groups were forced to practice in cramped spaces because of the lack of room. He frowned. This wasn't working. The hall was too small. He needed a better solution. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. An idea struck him. Why not build a dedicated dueling arena? A fully equipped, spacious arena. That would solve the crowding problem and provide better training conditions for the young wizards. They could practice spells there any time they wanted, and, if necessary, hold actual duels. Sebastian gathered the professors and explained his idea in detail. Brilliant, Sebastian, Professor Flitwick said approvingly. This will give the young wizards a professional place to practice. Professor McGonagall looked at Sebastian with admiration. We could use the open area next to the Quidditch pitch. There's plenty of space there. Well, you all watch things here, Professor McGonagall said, turning to leave the hall. I'll go find Dumbledore and get this settled. Wonderful, simply wonderful. Lockhart gushed, after seeing Sebastian's gaze. I will donate 10,000 gold galleons in my personal name. Snape gave Sebastian a curt nod. If you require any assistance, do not hesitate to ask. Professor McGonagall returned quickly. She handed Sebastian a small cloth bag. Dumbledore said he trusts your judgment and told you to go for it. That night, at Swan Manor, Sebastian sat on the sofa, staring at a red gem on the table, lost in thought. The bathroom door opened, and Mia emerged in her pajamas, hair still damp. She flicked her wand, and her hair instantly dried and smoothed, releasing a faint fragrance. Mia sat beside Sebastian, her eyes drawn to the gem. Sebastian, what kind of stone is that? It's gorgeous. She asked. Sebastian smiled and drew her close, letting her lean against his shoulder. It's the Philosopher's Stone, darling, he whispered mysteriously. Mia's eyes widened in shock. The Philosopher's Stone? Nicholas Flamels. Didn't you say it was in Dumbledore's possession? Dumbledore trusts you enough to let you take it out of Hogwarts. Sebastian nodded, looking at the stone, his mind racing. After receiving the cloth bag from Professor McGonagall, he'd simply tossed it into his undetectable extension bag and continued to supervise his students. He honestly hadn't expected the bag to contain the Philosopher's Stone. Why was Dumbledore suddenly being so generous? He wasn't even allowed to look at the Philosopher's Stone before, and now it was handed straight to him. He'd thought he'd have to pay for the duel arena himself. Sebastian was stunned. He had no idea what Dumbledore was thinking. The stone held limitless temptation, and anyone who obtained it risked succumbing to endless greed. Was this trust? Or a test? If it was just a test, the stakes were high. Sebastian hesitated for only a moment before resolving to be honorable. Whether it was trust or testing, since Dumbledore had entrusted the Philosopher's Stone to him, he couldn't do anything dishonorable. A mere piece of gold couldn't corrupt his noble spirit. He would show Dumbledore what a true Slytherin was like. This magic stone would never be abused. Sebastian stroked Mia's hair, a look of determination in his eyes, and slowly shared his thoughts with her. Mia raised her head, gazing at Sebastian. Admiration shone in her eyes. This man was her hero. As if sensing the love in Mia's eyes, Sebastian swept her up and carried her to the bedroom. The Philosopher's Stone lay quietly on the table, like a plain, unremarkable rock.